in tonight's conversation, I have some questions I'd like to ask, and then we have a number of questions from the audience. So if you're willing, we'll dive right in.
I'm willing, but let me start by thanking you, Janet, for doing this. I've served with an awful lot of people in my career, and two things I joke but it's true. I always say when I introduce Janet, two things you got to know about her. One, she's smarter than you. And two, she has incredible integrity. And it was an honor serving with you. You were a great governor. You were a great Secretary of Homeland Security, which was a mammoth department you organized and put together. And you were my vote for the next Supreme Court Justice. I wish you had done that, but you wouldn't. And she now runs a budget larger than the state of Arizona when she was governor. So this is a very talented person. Thanks for doing it.
Well, why don't we begin, Mr. Vice President? Why did you write the book, and what do you hope people get out of it?
Well, I wrote the book for two reasons. And by the way, as I used to say in the Senate, a point of personal privilege, the love of my life and the life of my love is here, my oldest granddaughter named after my deceased daughter. This is Naomi Biden. Stand up and say hi, Naomi. No offense, Madam President, but she's a freshman at Columbia Law School. Yeah. And she came out. She doesn't go back to school till the 20th. And one of the great honors I have is my granddaughters love me more than anybody in the whole world, and I love them, and we travel a lot together. So thanks, baby, for being here. I wrote the book for two reasons. One incredibly selfish reason. I wanted my grandchildren, Beau's children, and my grandchildren by my other children to know who Beau was in great detail and sharp relief, and I wanted my whole progeny to know. And I knew whatever I wrote would be examined very closely, and I wanted a factual account of just what a remarkable man he was. It was very selfish of me. But he was the finest man I've ever known, and his brother and sister share that view as well. The second reason I wrote the book was I didn't want it to be about pain and remorse. I wanted it to be about hope and let people know, because, as a matter of fact, some of you I met tonight, two people come up to me and said separately that I just lost my son. Another one said, I just lost my daughter. And you give me hope. There's a way through this, that you can find redemption in purpose. You can find redemption in purpose and being able to do the things that your son, daughter, husband, wife, whoever you lost, would want you to be doing. I got a lot of wonderful letters and notes, Janet. A woman who admires you and you know well, Vicki Kennedy, Teddy's wife. Teddy was a great mentor and became a close friend of mine when the boy's mother was killed with her sister early on. And he knew the family well, and they know the family well. And she wrote me this beautiful letter. And she said every time Teddy would get down, he'd go to the top drawer of his chest of drawers and pull out a letter that his father, Ambassador Kennedy, in 1956 wrote to a friend who had lost a beloved son. And he said, John, for the longest time after he lost his son Joe in World War II over the English Channel, and he said, for the longest time after I lost Joe, I kept saying, why? Why did this happen? Why me? And went on. He said, and then one day, because I'm quoting, because life has to be lived, I thought to myself, what would Joe be doing if he were still alive? And I decided to devote myself to that cause. And then he said, John, maybe that's the reason for it. Maybe that's the explanation. And so I wanted people to understand that there is there is hope. There is a way through this. That your son, your daughter, and I'm looking at a beautiful woman who recently lost a child who I just met. They're part of you. They'll never go away. Never go away. And the time will come when the memory of that beloved person you lost will bring a smile to your lips before a tear to your eye. And that's when you know. That's when you know you can make it. And I found that the best way to do that is to find purpose. And so I wrote it in order to hopefully help people understand that you can get through this. You can get through this. And life will go on because they'll always be a part of you. They'll always be a part of you. They're the two reasons why I wrote the book.
So the book begins with a description of Thanksgiving in Nantucket. And maybe you can explain for the audience how that tradition started and what it means for you.
Well, you know, when no man deserves one great love, let alone two. And I adored my deceased wife, Nelia. But almost 6 years later, I met and fell in love with and married Jill, who is an incredible woman. As I was being interviewed on Valentine's Day early on, and Juju Chang looked at me and said, "Everybody says you have a great love affair with your wife." I said, "Yeah, but everybody knows I love her more than she loves me." And she said, "That's what they say." But you're not joking. In Washington, as Janet can tell you, and the ambassador can tell you, I'm known as Jill's husband. But when Jill was an incredible mother, and she put our family back together, and she fell in love with the boys, and they did her. As a matter of fact, Janet, the way that came about, one day I used to take the boys to school before I catch the train, and one day Bo and Hunter, Naomi's daddy, and his older brother by a year, would come into the bathroom where I was shaving, and that's where we'd have our conversations. This is the guy I grew up with, my son, Bo, and knows these stories. And Bo said to Hunter, "You tell him." And then, "No, you tell him." This went back and forth for I don't know how long. And I said, "Boys, what is it?" Finally, her daddy said, "Dad, Bo and I think we should marry Jill." Swear to God, true story. And I had asked Jill to marry me 5 times, and she said no the first 4. And so anyway, to make a long story not quite so long, what happened, Janet, was, and it relates to Nantucket, Jill was an incredible mother who made sure the boys kept contact with their deceased mother's family, and would take them up to Auburn, New York, where they lived, and take them down to Florida, where they were in the summer. And so when it was official we were married, everybody wanted us for Thanksgiving. My parents wanted us, my former wife's parents wanted us, and her parents. And so I had an old, rusty, crusty old guy who landed in Normandy at age 19 named Wes Barthelmess from Massachusetts, from Boston. And he was a brilliant guy. He was 30 years my senior. And I said, "What am I going to do, Wes?" He's my administrative assistant. He said, "Declare a nuclear holiday." I said, "What the hell's a nuclear holiday?" He said, "Decide and tell all the in-laws and parents that you're going to have, you and the boys and Jill are going to have Thanksgiving as your day." And I said, "Where should I go?" He said, "Nantucket." I said, "What the hell's in Nantucket?" He said, "Nothing." In the winter. So we started to go to Nantucket 44 years ago, and we kept it up till there were 15 of us going to Nantucket, and that's where Bo reposed. And we have this traditions that we always do. And we're hidebound in tradition. And so I opened the book trying to explain, the best way to explain the family is the tradition of going to Nantucket, and how you can never leave the job, and how the service would set up, the secure phones that you had and the rest. And it was the best place to sort of introduce hopefully all of you readers, to an understanding of the family and how we balanced family and work and our relationships with one another. So that's how it started. And 4 years later, we're still doing it. We only missed two Nantuckets in that time, and one was when Jill was pregnant with our daughter Ashley, and the other one was when we lost Bo. So, but it's been a great. We're a hidebound family. We're tradition. I think tradition is family tradition is sort of the soil from which all your values flow, and they get nailed down. They get stamped in your DNA, and so that's why it's been so important to us.
So the relationship between your family and your work resonates